Mr. Praveen Paras, Vice President, Cloudstrats Technologies Private Limited. A huge round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Moving on, Mr. Aniket Malshe, Founder and Owner, Nikem Solutions. Our next panelist is Mr. Venkatesh Inamdar, Managing Director, Tessa Tapes India Private Limited. We also have Mr. Gopal Murli Bhagat, Deputy Chief Executive, Indian Banks Association. Next, we have with us Mr. Prabhakar Dalal, former Executive Director and former Senior Advisor, Exim Bank of India. Come on, a huge round of applause for all our panelists today. And to moderate this discussion, may I call upon Mr. Somdeb Sengupta, Partner, KPMG India. Over to you.
Very good evening, everyone. This is going to be the final panel discussion, and it's on risk management. So, as you all know that, risk management typically is considered to be the second line of defense or third line of defense in an organization. And, but now, we are in the middle of Football World Cup going on. So you all have seen how important defenses are. And at times, the attack starts with the defense. So risk management definitely is one of the very important aspects and areas, specifically, when we are looking at organizations which are, medium-sized SME organization, and there are a lot of, disruptions which are happening, a lot of changing dynamics which are there, be it geopolitical, be it we have seen during pandemic, the changes and that, the challenges that the small and medium enterprises have faced. So, it becomes very, very important to recognize the importance of the changing landscape of risk management as well, apart from the changing business dynamics, and somewhere kind of they go hand in hand. So with that, we're going to be kind of the theme of the session, and we have our eminent panelists, and we will have, seek their opinion and their point of view from that perspective. So, the first thing is that, given that we are focusing on the SME entities or the small and medium-sized entities, so what are the some of the emerging risks that we see in this sector, and what are how best they can shield themselves against those emerging risks? So I will request Mr. Bhagat for his point of view on this particular role.
Thank you very much, and a very good evening to all of you. Really good opportunity to meet you, and but just a small correction here. He said it is the last panel discussion, and it is on risk management. So what my feeling is that, being a banker, the risk management should be the first when it comes to running your industry or your organization. Considering the present environment after the pandemic, the way economies are bouncing back, I think there is a zeal now which we are able to see. And my feeling is that given that the markets are now integrated, it is very difficult to say that we are operating in a particular market, say Indian market, or a particular product. In fact, the reality is you are having a global challenge, number one. Irrespective whether you are an exporter or importer, or whether your ingredients of your product, it includes any imported thing or not, still you are a global player, and you are competing with global industries, global players. So that is one issue which will overlap the technology as well as the global competitors. Something which we are manufacturing today or handling today, it may become some niche area for some other market. So that is one big challenge to my mind, which all the business organizations, establishments, industries should always keep in focus. And we need to spend some resources on this. Second major issue which I would like to highlight is now coming up is ESG. Though it seems that it's not touching our door, but my feeling is it's very much closer, more closer than we perceive it to be. And no later, sooner you may find some inhibitions at the global level for funding those industries, those organizations which are not ESG compliant per se. So these are the two major risks which I perceive as of now, which I will draw attention and where people should devote not only the technology expenses, but awareness which is more required to ensure that you remain competitive. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you, sir. I think you touched upon a very important point on that businesses are no longer kind of, shielded or it's looking within the country, because now we are all part of the global citizenship, right? So, but that means that, any change in the global dynamics, geopolitical turmoil, etc., that creates a ripple, it creates an impact to our businesses. So, Mr. Aniket, my question, I'd like to hear from you. What do you think that any such, geopolitical turmoil or changes that impacts our industries, our businesses?
Good evening, everybody. Geopolitical turmoils, one thing about that is that they're completely beyond our control. That is the number one thing that we should understand. That it is not something, not always we can even plan for. Like for example, Russia-Ukraine war. You would never plan for something like that, right? That this would happen. COVID, another thing, that you never knew that something like that's going to happen. So what you can do, so there are three aspects which you can actually do. One is that if you're a manufacturer or a trader, you should look at the amount of imports that you're doing and from where you're doing. Like if you have too much dependency on one particular area, like let's say that your majority, 90% plus import is coming from China, and something happens in China, and then you are suddenly finding that your business is at risk. So to de-risk that, you need to first of all figure out that is there any alternate source that we can import from. And now, if you look at the past 2-3 years, and also with the government support, there are a lot of schemes running on. Government is running Atmanirbhar Bharat plus this Make in India campaigns, which are at the nascent stage. Of course, they will take multiple years to stabilize. But that also means that you can find a lot of import substitutes locally. Right, so you can actually reduce your dependence on the imported material, and you can find manufacturers which are locally manufacturing. So I would just give you an example that my company Nicam, we have a strategy that we have no direct imports. We have literally zero imports which are direct. We always buy from local manufacturers. We try to find, but again, it happens that our manufacturers or some traders that we buy from are importing. So there can be some impact at even at my business, but that is very well reduced, and it's actually taken care of, de-risked, you can say. Second, again, is the reverse. If you're an exporter, then if you're an exporter, again, if you're trying to export to one particular area, you're going to have a problem. So you need to find out the different markets. You need to always constantly look for markets which are emerging, because the stable markets like Europe, US, they have a lot of entry barriers. Like for example, if Europe Union has, they have a concept of REACH, and every year they are adding more and more elements in that, the banned products. So if your product is getting in that list and your product is getting banned, then you suddenly know that your market is completely closed. Emerging markets in that way are better. They are actually more open to importing products from India. So you should always look at the alternate markets. And third, I would say is products, that what products you're dealing with. Now, if you're dealing with products which are again not diversified well, and too much specific in specific area, that can also lead to certain problems in your business. I'll give you an example. So this is not a product which is we make, again, not from direct imports, but there's a product which we buy. Our manufacturer buys palm oil from Malaysia, and suddenly Malaysia banned palm oil exports. Our product got affected. So because we have plethora of products, we could actually afford to keep one product or even close down the production of that particular product, because that product was actually, the cost of the product was going higher than the selling price, right? So that is not going to be accepted in the market. So we could afford to shut down that product for a certain period till the market stabilized. So if you have diversification, in the end, the global turmoil can be managed. And lastly, I would say that every turmoil is an opportunity. It's an opportunity to actually do something different. So you can look at it that way, that if it's a turmoil right now, yes, fine, analyze, go back to your brain room, and how you can convert that into a advantage, which is possible.
Thank you. Now, staying on that topic, so I will kind of move to Mr. Prabhakar. Given your long-term association with, Exim Bank, and as a financier, you have seen, how this whole, different geography, geopolitical things have turned out. So, and you also have seen, how the overall changing landscape of risk management. So, I would like to hear from you, sir, that what would, in your view, are the key competencies which need to be developed to address these kind of changing dynamics and these changes in this market?
Good evening, everyone. Risks are integral to any business, and as far as micro, small, and medium enterprises are concerned, risks are much greater. There are traditional risks and there are emerging risks. We have recently seen the COVID impact and the containment measures which were taken by the government, which impacted all segments of economy, but the MSME sector was impacted the most. Although government has taken a number of measures like emergency credit line, credit guarantee scheme, equity infusion and things like that. But now the COVID is behind us, and the demand, as per the latest report of SIDBI and CIBIL, the demand for credit has increased 1.6 times pre-COVID level. So adequate and timely credit to SME sector from the institutional finance sector is very, very crucial for furtherance of the SME sector, which is crucial for the economic growth of the country. Now, as far as risks are concerned, we know access to credit is a major risk because they don't have the collaterals. There is a scheme, CGT SME. Then they don't have the properly, professionally prepared accounting books. They don't have collaterals to offer. So those problems are still there. Then technology should be appropriate. There should be scalability, ability to recruit talented and skilled manpower is also an issue. So all those are business risks which all SMEs have to carry with them. But the new risks which have now emerged, for example, is reputational risks because of social media. So one has to be very careful about that. Then there is compliance risks, because a lot of compliances have come in from regulators, from statutory bodies. So because the cost of non-compliance is greater than the cost of compliance. So one has to be very careful, taxation, GST and things like that. So these are the new risks. Mr. Bhagat mentioned about ESG also. If you are an exporter and if you are exporting to countries in Europe, for example, if your unit is not ESG compliant, then they may not import your goods. So that awareness is set in, but then I think more needs to be done as far as ESG is concerned. So these are the emerging risks for which we have to have a proper and robust risk management policy.
Thank you, sir, for your view. Now, so initial conversation, what we kind of, understand that obviously there are traditional risks and then there are emerging risks. And then obviously there are some external factors in which we may not have control, which can create certain kind of turmoil. But any such turmoil, disruption, that also gives rise to opportunities. And it also creates space for new players, new innovation to come into picture. So, Mr. Venkatesh, from you, would like to hear that. What do you think can be such opportunities in this, that are there in this turmoil? Yeah.
If I really look at the entire scenario at this point of time, I don't think there's a better scenario because it's highly bullish. Just look at the papers you read or you hear, whatever you hear, it's all about positivity. Okay, there's a geopolitical risk, all that is there and in its place. But when you look at it, it's a very different scenario. You read the papers, we have moved to the 5th position in GDP. As country, we have moved to, and we are talking of displacing Germany by 2027. We are talking of our exports touching $1 trillion by 2030. If we are talking of these kind of positive things, I think what is required at this point of time is we need to think very, very differently. To add to that, for MSME, the government is helping like anything. Look at the policies, whether it's a logistic policy or whether it's in terms of money or whether you look at it in terms of skill development. Every little thing is helping the MSMEs to become more and more competitive. Okay? In that kind of a scenario, and to add to it, we are a nation blessed with software. So like things like AI, things like ML and things like 3D printing, these are all going to help us, help the MSME quite a bit and make things move ahead. But what is the real challenge? The real challenge is MSMEs, 90% of it is small enterprises, very small enterprises. And that's where the challenge lies. With these opportunities that are there, and if the MSMEs really want to move up, they need to move from that niche in which they are working at this point of time to mass. And that's a big transition. And to do that big transition, what's needed or what's expected is a lot more aggressive thinking which needs to come from the entrepreneurs or the small companies so that they move up from that 5 crore bracket way up. And if that has to happen, they need to be aggressive, they need to have a right strategy. Of course, most of the entrepreneurs, they do have a strategy, but then they get bogged down with the day-to-day. So what's needed at that point of time is, yes, one is a aggressive strategy to move up and so that the opportunity which exists has to be harnessed. And the second part of that is, yes, they need talent. I think one of the fellow panelists has mentioned about the talent. Yes, the talent has to move up. So that's another area that has to move up. These two things coupled with, of course, a little on the processes, if these three things have been worked out, definitely, things can definitely move up. That's it from us.
Yeah, thank you, sir. So, if I have to kind of, understand from what you said that definitely there are opportunities, there are areas where people, can be aggressive and, make your growth. But as you know that, there is a relationship between risk and return. So we have all read in our books, and we also see that, depending on the risk appetite of different organizations, some are more aggressive, some are conservative. So, Mr. Milind, would I like to hear from you that I know it's a very fine balancing act, but what would be your view on maintaining that balance between risk and return for Indian enterprises?
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Since we are talking about micro, small, and medium enterprises, the kind of a risk that the startup companies, the entrepreneurial companies have to undergo are very, very different than probably how the large businesses go through. Prima facie challenge comes in the basic construct of the business, and the business risk starts from there, is how do you plan your business risk modeling? And many a times, bright entrepreneurs or have certain ideas about products, certain ideas about technology, certain ideas about new ways of servicing people, go with their thought process. First mistake that normally happens, and I'm a serial entrepreneur and I have done some kind of a blunder, so can associate with what happens with this small, medium enterprise. I'm still a medium enterprise even now. One, that we don't build management team, because we don't have that kind of a cash when we start with the business. And when we start with the business, we get attached to the idea, we get so attached to that idea that we want to implement that idea, and that idea to get fruitful and to materialize, humongous hours are spent. And certain nitty-gritties, right, that how will I create the product, how will I create the price, how will I promote the product, and how will I distribute the product, that nitty-gritties will stay away, right? So much money goes into the funding and research and development of the organization that suddenly when the order comes through and we have to start delivering on a mass scale, suddenly we remember that we have not thought about what should be the price of the product, kind of a market intelligence that needs to be driven, and then to just crash through whatever activities that are happening in your particular business. And the major risk that comes in, and normally we don't talk about that risk in particular, is the cash flow risk. And cash flow is something that if you don't have a cash, you don't invest. If you don't have a cash, you don't run your business. If you don't have a cash, you need to be either with Mr. Dalal or Mr. Prabhakar asking for what do I do next. And Gopals and Prabhakars of the world are probably ruthless during that time because they are also looking at whether they should fund and what is the risk associated with funding this guy. Bright ideas, brilliant thought process, can market this product, but where is his distribution network? And breaking through the distribution network of already an established product, howsoever differentiated product that you have, creates more problem. And anything and everything can be managed through social media and the facade and the statements that you give it to the investors or the fund raisers for you. The cash flow risk cannot be limited by just saying, because you need to raise that funds. And even if you get funds, then again you start talking about returns because the person who is funding you wants that return. So there is a gestation period for you, that what kind of a business do you want to run, what kind of a profitability that will come out of that particular business modeling, how you have done the financial modeling part of it. So risk is in every part. Now we spoke about COVID, we spoke about the whole Ukraine issue and everything about it. In 20 and 21 itself, and these are all publicly available domain reports, 31% of small businesses, 52% of personal businesses closed down in US and in India and in Asia Pacific and in Middle East during the entire 2020. It took October of 21 to start looking at how are we going to bounce. So those MSMEs could sustain that 18 months of period, could only bounce off. So 1.6 times the credit lines are getting extended or getting asked. Are these guys who became resilient, who adopted, and Indians basically adopt. The third risk that comes in from the product perspective and the gestation period, the technology is changing every 2.5 years now. Earlier, the technology used to change in 5 years, 7 years. The versions are changing. The outdated versions are not more applicable. Support stop, right? So all these technology products, the support will go off. Support will not be available. You need to upgrade to a newer version, a newer platform. And then the technology obsolescence risk also starts rising. So what's your go-to market strategy of a particular product? And then we talk about this whole piece about artificial intelligence, ML and NLP. So technology, though it is advantageous, it provides a disruptive model to do the business. At the same time, if you don't time it right, that becomes a huge risk for your product and your services. That's kind of my thought process is all about. And then coming to returns, you need to be gambler to play high risk and high return game, right? And in this particular gambling zone, there are 3 types of entrepreneurial personalities that you will get. Some who will claim that I am a big risk taker, I am a gambler, right? Second will say I am very, very risk averse, I will like to play safe because he wants to be in that compliance zone. Because these guys will ask for compliance zone. Are you compliant with this? Are you compliant with that? And second will say, no, I am very calculated risk taker. He doesn't know what risk he's taking. And he calls it as a calculated risk taker. But at the same time, what do you mean by returns, right? In the initial stage, will you like to play a high volume game? If a high volume game you want to play, are you capacitized to play that high volume game? How much can be your capacity? How much you will invest into your capacity to produce that kind of a stuff? Is a very difficult activity altogether. And you need to model it every time. You need to be completely adaptable, completely flexible, and sensitive to what's happening around you. And that basically dictates what the return should be. My sincere thought process on this is start with a low return, right? Do not take too many risks in this particular kind of a space, and then start building on your business model where you can start getting into low volume, high margin kind of a business.
Thank you. Thank you. So I think, Mr. Prabhakar, you have some point of view on this one, please.
Now, one very good point was made regarding cash flow, which of course is very important. I used to be on ET Now, on call-in shows for the SME units, and many units, the enterprises, used to raise the question that when we buy goods, raw materials, our vendors, our suppliers would not give us credit, saying that you are too small and we can't trust you. But when they would supply their finished products to large corporates, even public sector undertakings, they would pay after 120 days. We pointed out that as per the MSME Act 2006, only 45 days is allowed. Why don't you complain against that? They will say if we complain, then we lose the order. They will place order with somebody else. So you can't eat the cake and have it too.
Thank you, sir, for that point. So I think, one of the key takeaway from Mr. Milind's use of technology. So on cue of that, I would kind of move to Mr. Praveen. So what do you think that, in your view, today's, small and medium enterprises, they need to have in terms of technology? What would be the basic tech stack that needs to be there?
So what we would sort of evangelize about technology is, right, the business is basically trying to create a new product which the market is trying to accept, right, on the basis of the market analysis that a particular company does. Or as a person, if you want to sell something, you sort of look towards what kind of service offering or the product you want to create, which solves a particular problem in the entire world. But then again, how do you do it? Do you only focus towards the business or the product or service that you want to create? Or do you want to invest your time towards working towards the technology or selling side of it, the logistics mechanism of it, to manage all that, to govern all the compliances that we are talking about, right? To understand the market research wherein Dun and Bradstreet also comes in, right? So do you want to focus, invest your time towards that side of the things, or you want to focus towards the industry or what the product or service that you want to create? What we will sort of say towards that is, let IT as be an enabler for your business. Do not make it as a cost center. Rather, use it to drive your business initiatives, your open new plans that you want to create. Your automation techniques can sort of help towards maintaining compliances which are from the regulatory bodies. These are the kind of things you should work towards to sort of to reduce the cost of the business. So that helps. In our business standards, what we sort of evangelize towards the people is, let's say 3 A's of the business, right? So there are technology, 3 concepts which are usually there in the market now. One would be the artificial intelligence, which everybody talks about. The second part is the analytics of things, right? From the point of generating the business revenue, what kind of sales you are doing, to the point of maintaining a sentiment of the product or service that you are offering to the market, right? So that's there. And third would be the automating the menial jobs or the operational jobs that people usually invest upon. So then your entire workforce focuses on the actual work they are supposed to do, that is creating product or actually maintaining CSAT of the customers. So that's where we stand.
Thank you. Thank you. So now mostly we have established what are the baseline scenarios are and what are the things that bare minimum we need to do. So now let's kind of, for the last half of the discussion, focus on the growth part. Now, as you know that, so what would be the, some of the key factors that will drive growth in this sector? And obviously, with growth, you require commensurate risk management and compliance. So Aniket, from you, would like to hear what would be some of the key growth factors that you see in this sector?
So one important part is that for SMEs to grow, they must actually focus on innovation. That is a very critical portion. So innovation doesn't always mean that you are creating new products. It also means that you are improving on the existing products or existing processes. And you have to be literally creative. So Indians are known for this jugaad, right, ultimately. End of the day, when you are in a situation where you have to survive or sustain, you have to figure out a way to do that. And that is also called innovation at the end of the day. And that is a very key factor for SMEs. The second one is, of course, there are multiple areas where we can actually focus, which is one of them is the people. Yeah, so we have to actually So a lot of people actually don't think that your main contributors of your company are people. So you have to invest in people. You have to make sure that your people are competent. You have to make sure that they are very well trained and they can actually drive the company. So who is ultimately going to drive innovation? It's not always going to come from the owners. The people are going to drive the innovation. So these are some of the factors that I think SMEs can focus on.
No, thank you. And obviously, growth in this sector is very important because our forecast is that we are going to become $5 trillion economy, and this sector is going to be one of the key drivers for that kind of a growth. So obviously that means there has to be government support which are required, and which I think we touched upon during our discussion during COVID time, some of the credit guarantee scheme or the liquidity scheme which are provided by the government. So, Mr. Bhagat, from your side, would like to hear that what's your view on the different schemes which have been taken by the government, and what view would be some of the things that can government undertake to ensure that the growth in this sector is kind of maintained in the future.
Yeah, thank you. Definitely expectations are there from the industry side also, and during this pandemic period, I can say that lot many help was given, really extended by the government. Emergency credit lines were extended, and these things have really helped. And as discussed earlier, like for small units like CGT, MSc, covers are available. But I think a lot more needs to be done, and there are efforts on that part. But to give a helping hand, even at the beginning, as we discussed, that it depends on which stage you are in the maturity curve of your industry. In addition to financial assistance or subsidiaries or tax advantages, my emphasis will be more on the part of making our people more skilled and aware about the industry they are performing. For example, if we are producing something here today without keeping in mind how the same thing is being done in the other market, in other part of the world, given the integration of markets and the competitiveness, I still say whether you are an exporter or importer, or even if you are not an exporter and importer, it is very much desirable and needed that you keep yourself aware about what is happening in the other part of the globe. And then upskilling your people, upskilling yourself about the product, about the possible substitutes, about the new technology coming up, with a view to have more and more efficient processes in your place. So unless we really focus on these parts, any kind of subsidy from the government or any amount of financial assistance from the bankers, there is a feeling, bankers extend umbrella when it is not raining and take it away when it rains. So I think it happens because they are also into commercial activity, they are also into business. So they have to ensure they also survive. But friends, this is the basic principle of all the industries and all the enterprises. The question is of surviving. First of all, you have to ensure that you survive in medium term and long term. For that, some amount of your resources, your profits, must be earmarked for upskilling yourself, your processes, your employees, your people, your each and every director in the company, like he should be contributing. They all need upskilling. I think my goal will be that not only looking towards the government and the schemes, the industries should work on themselves for survival. That will help. I think industry bodies can help in this way. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So, when we talk about growth, obviously we are talking about future. And, it's a forward-looking term, the growth you are going to grow by X percentage, Y percentage. Which means that, any risk management or anything that also needs to be forward-looking. Unfortunately, most of the cases what we have seen, it's a more reactive measure that, some event has happened and then we start taking measures. So, sir, from you would like to hear that what do you think, the organizations can do to forecast or, predict what are those emerging risks and how they can prepare themselves against that? Be more proactive in risk management.
Now, first of all, MSME sector is very important for the Indian economy because it contributes 29% to GDP and almost 50% of exports come from this sector, provides employment opportunities to millions of people. And India is a very huge market, and scope and potential for growth for MSME sector is immense. What needs is a support system, and what an MSME unit should do is to strengthen all the enablers. One is, of course, one should have a good business idea, good business plans, and after that you should have a good business strategy. You should strengthen the human resources, financial resources, your systems and processes. So these are the enablers which every unit needs to keep strengthening. Keep in touch with what is happening around the world. Your technology, your various risks have to be managed, cyber security risk, and various risks have to be managed. At the same time, you should keep on strengthening your various enablers so that you can do business, you can make profit, you can grow and contribute to the nation and to the society. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So you spoke about the enablers and how we can, keep them strengthened and obviously commensurate, how we can be compliant to that. So if I kind of think from an enabler's perspective, I don't want to kind of call it a divide, but obviously there is one enabler is technology, and then there is another enabler which I would say more soft skill based, as you said, that upskilling people, having a business acumen, etc. So the next question is basically to two of the panelists. So first I'd like to hear from Praveen on the technology side, that what do you think are those enablers which are more forward looking and future looking and what can help our MSME industry? And then I'll come to Mr. Godbole to understand more from a business, and you spoke about you being a serial entrepreneur, so I'd like to tap into your experience to understand the other part of that.
Sure. So from a technology perspective, what we sort of preach to the people and have worked with and deployed solutions across is, the basic idea should be about finding the right numbers that work for your business, right? And how do you find your numbers is basically from a ledger, from a fact sheet, from a feedback form that is coming across. Digitize all those, right? And then those numbers have become an automatic process, and it keeps on generating on your desk again and again on a periodic manner. Now, what is happening is you are creating data about your own business, and then when you club that data about your own business with the market analysis which is happening across the world, you sort of leverage on what are the key opportunities, the missing pointers, the anomalies, the pattern which is there in the data, the seasonal business sales that you are making, the non-seasonal business sales which are impacting your overall growth, the learning, let's say the skills which are available in your teams and the skills that others are leveraging. All that comes across as a single dashboard, and you find yourself as a business analytics on how the company is performing or where you would like to take across. Even in terms of compliances and all that, as cyber security that people were talking about, right? So what we do is, bigger enterprises as well create a dashboard. It's basically called as a CISO dashboard, which maintains the risk management of a particular organization. Same goes for compliance team, auditors team, and what they do is they maintain those numbers where there's NAs are there, or what they have already mitigated is something which they are having it. People think that it is usually a costly solution about it, but then again what you are doing is basically looking at your own data. So doing it on a freeware as well, or a small solution does it. Even Excel works on it. So that's where.
Mr. Milind, to you, please.
So two risks that probably come out is the whole piece about liabilities, right? And as an entrepreneur, we don't take life insurance policy, forget about taking business insurance. And this liability insurance becomes extremely critical because in the way of doing business or making your company tick and work, many a times this liability portion is humongous. We even don't know how to manage contracts or how to legally word it. So investment into a right finance team, a right legal team, or getting advisors and consultants to advise you on what the kind of a liability risk that will come in and while running the business becomes extremely critical. And we talked about a lot of technology, and many businesses are enabled with technology now. And technology is providing a disruption also, and technology is providing enablement also. Cybersecurity risk, and many of the companies still do not take the cybersecurity insurance. For simple reason that we anticipate that the technology that we have adopted and that we have implemented, there will not be a potential cyber threat because I have these firewalls and I have this technology set up which will prevent any periphery attack that will happen on the systems and applications that I have deployed in order to run my business. But cybersecurity threat is very, very crucial. And all the information security standards and certifications that you can probably adopt will not prevent you from getting exposed to this all cyber security attacks that will happen on your application and development. And basically they are not interested in the sentiments or the usage data per se. They are interested in a personally identifiable information. And that becomes extremely critical for all the people because cyber security threats, application downloading threats, accessing unwanted areas of your company, of your product, of your platform becomes a very, very critical risk from these 2 points of view.
Thank you. As we kind of approach the end of our panel discussion, we almost left with very little time. And before I ask the final question to Mr. Venkatesh, we discussed about emerging risks. We discussed about the opportunities, government support, growth areas, etc. But at the end of the day, it really boils down to the entrepreneur, boils down to the team who are kind of looking into this whole opportunity and what are the different kind of drivers that can make their business go to the next level. I think you spoke about that initial comment that how they can take the business to the next level. So the final comments from you, we want to hear that what would be those key 3-4 areas where they can actually drive and scale the business up.
I've been a little more aggressive, probably because I'm not an entrepreneur and I'm using somebody else's money and working. Probably me and Praveen are the only ones on this panel who are working for someone, and probably like Mr. Godbole says, cash flow challenges and all. We always have the big brothers to work to help us. Having said all this, I think there's still a very, there is a humongous opportunity which is existing, which I spoke about it when I started my discussion. I strongly believe that it is there. And there can't be a better moment than this. When we are talking of $5 trillion economy, when we are talking of displacing a developed economy like Germany, when all these things are there, how does the entrepreneur look at it is more important. The entrepreneur will have to look at it, there are 2 ways of looking at it. One way is, okay, I look at it the way I use my existing lens. With this huge opportunity existing, I look at my business, look at my capabilities, look at my competencies, look at my products, look at my distribution channels, all based on what? The existing lens. And with this kind of an opportunity, I make more money out of it. That's one way of looking at it. I'm not saying it's a wrong way, but that's one way. But then, if MSME has to contribute humongously to the GDP of this nation, then what is that they need to do? And probably that's where our entrepreneurs, like some of the entrepreneurs who have done like OYO or Zerodha and some of them who did some wonderful work, what they did was probably they looked at it, what theoreticians call it as an outside-in approach, which is basically they looked at the needs of the customers, and that around the needs of the customers, they develop things. Okay? And that is one thing which entrepreneur could do. And entrepreneurs are very good at that. Probably they have a pulse which is far better than the pulse of someone like us who are working. They have to work on that, understand what exactly is the requirement of the customer, and based on those changing needs of the customer, probably define or probably challenge the status quo in which they are and take it to a different level, wherein they probably they'll need to move out of the markets that they are working. They'll probably even move out of the industry that they are working. And in that kind of a scenario, if they are able to do things which are extraordinary, will be a game changers for that. And that is what is required if we are looking at a $5 trillion economy and MSME trying to contribute to that. But you may ask, is it really possible? Is the entrepreneur, is he not getting into an area which is absolutely risky? Yes, the area is definitely risky. There's no second thought on that. But then, when you're constructing or when you're developing your business based on the needs of the customer, and you understand those needs of your customers, and based on that, you develop the organization. If that is not being done, irrespective whether you're looking from the traditional lens or whether you're creating those markets, irrespective of that, you would be in trouble if you do not have a robust system or a strong way of looking at your customers' needs. Then, like, you might say that, is it really possible? I can share with you one of my dealers in southern India. He had only one thing, and that was he used to have a counter sale and nothing else. His son joined the business. And of course, this young generation team are very strong with technology. They understand technology well. So he came and he started working. We said, Dad, okay, you continue the way you are doing. I would probably grow this business in a very different way. And he started approaching the customers directly and also put it on the net. All this in less than 2 years. This guy was able to get to 15% of what his dad has got in 30 years. So, obviously, what the entrepreneurs need to do is upskill, as what was being said earlier. They need to really move things up. They have to use this opportunity and try to leverage it to the maximum possible extent, so that we are in line with the $5 trillion goal that as a country that we are talking of. It's very simple for the entrepreneur. One is, yes, he has ideas and he has always taken a risk. Okay, but he has probably managed the risk so well, and that's why he has been there in the business for long. What he needs to do is, one, upskill the people that he has. Second, get the second generation and let them work on the technology. This combination could help to take this smaller companies that we have to a larger level, and that's how the contribution towards GDP could be much higher from these companies.
Thank you. I think thank you for your wonderful comments. I think it's kind of wraps up this whole session in a very nice way. So I had a lot of fun discussing with this eminent panel. I hope the same for the audience as well. So again, thank you so much for your valuable insights. Really appreciate, and thank you audience for your patient hearing, and thank you the event organizers for having such a wonderful topic to the kind of end of the session. So thank you so much.
Can we have a huge round of applause? Thank you, gentlemen, for so much knowledge that you've been sharing with us. I would request you to stay back for a few more minutes. May I now request Mr. Mohit Gupta, Senior Director, Sales, Dun & Bradstreet India, to kindly come on stage and give away the mementos to our esteemed panelists. Can we have a huge round of applause, please? Starting with Mr. Godbole. Come on, ladies and gentlemen, we can do better. Followed by Mr. Paras. Okay, we have Mr. Okay, so kindly handle Mr. Sengupta. A huge round of applause, please. Mr. Malche. Mr. Inamdar. Mr. Kanti. Can we have a huge round of applause? Come on, where's the energy? Mr. Inamdar. Followed by Mr. Bhagat. Come on, ladies and gentlemen, where is the energy? Why do I see the energy dropping? Haven't we fed you all enough? Can we request all of you to get together for a group picture, please? And Mr. Dalal. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you so much. I can already see that the energy is dropping. Why is it so? Come on, can we have a huge round of applause for our eminent panelists here? My simple and plain question, how many of you like to have medicines in this room right now? How many of you like having medicines? I don't see anybody raising their hands, nor do I. But there is this one medicine that I guess everybody loves to have. Any guesses what I'm going to talk about? You're right, laughter is the best medicine. Well, without